Welcome to Spin My Cloud YouTube channel. In this video, we will explore about IAM permission boundary with a real world scenario. Many would have question about why we need to use IAM permission boundary. We will try to discuss with an example. Okay, so let's come to a general team structure or a typical team structure in the organization. So we would have three important personas who would be involved in the project. So one would be the team called Central Cloud Team. The other one is an Application DevOps team, and third one would be the Cyber team. So the Central Cloud Team is responsible to set up the AWS organization multi-account setup with required networks like the traffic that needs to happen for north-south and then east-west traffic. So all those things are set up. The multi-organization is set up. So those activities would be taken care by Central Cloud Team. They are responsible for us to give that the foundation layer for us with the accounts that needs to be provisioned and that can be accessed. So that's Central Cloud Team. And we would have the Application DevOps team. So their responsibility is to provision the required AWS resources in the account that is provisioned for them and on the application that they want to run or host on that AWS infrastructure. And we would also have another team called Cyber team to review or check whether the infrastructure that is getting provisioned in the AWS account is deployed with the required security controls. So these three typically we would have or we would see in the general team structure. So when the application DevOps team requires an application infrastructure to be provisioned, so what they will do is they will reach out to Central Cloud Team to request an AWS account. Okay, so the Central Cloud Team, what they will do is they will provision an AWS account and also provision the required IAM role with the permissions which can be assumed by Application DevOps team to provision their stack. So the process is the Central Cloud team decides to create AWS account when there is a request from Application DevOps team, and the account would have an IAM role with the permissions which can be assumed by Application DevOps team and then provision the resource. So that's the process that's been decided, but the problem here is how would the Central Cloud team decide the permission required for an Application DevOps team? Each Application DevOps team might have a different requirements of stack that they have wanted to provision. For example, Application 1 would needs to deploy the EC2 instance infrastructure. Maybe the Application 2 might needs to deploy or provision the application on ECS and Fargate. The other application team requires to work on the DynamoDB tables. So each application DevOps team has their different requirements, but if we go with the process that we just discussed, the Central Cloud team, what they would do is they will provision an AWS account and they will create a generic DevOps role or IAM role with the permission, generic IAM permission, and give it to each application DevOps team that they are requesting for access or requesting for the account. So this somewhere we are breaking the least privilege policy. The Central Cloud team is, since they are giving generic IAM permissions and policies to each application team, so it's kind of breaking the least privilege policy. So we have to think of a different approach. So what is a different approach? So here when the application team requests for an AWS account, So the central cloud team only provisions the AWS account with an IAM role, but without any permissions or policies attached to it. So there would be a separate pipeline that would be created, the CI/CD pipeline, and in that pipeline, the application team has to mention in the JSON format. They have to mention the IAM roles, or sorry, the IAM permission that is required for them. That gets reviewed by the application DevOps team, and then the cyber team would be reviewing the permissions that is being requested by application DevOps team, and then finally the central cloud team approves that permission and then attaches that permission to the DevOps role that is created. So this enables that each application DevOps team can write their own permission that are required, and then through the pipeline that central cloud team has provisioned, with the approvals from cyber and central cloud team, the permissions can be attached to the DevOps role that is required for the application team. So what we have done now is there is a pipeline created to specifically attach the permission, but this helps us to make sure that every team gets the permission that is required for them. So the process works fine. So if you see now, for an example, I've shown three DevOps team here: application 1 team, application 2, and application 3. And application 1 team requires an access to provision an EC2 instance. That EC2 instance needs to provision or need to connect to S3 bucket and CloudWatch logs. So their permissions which are required needs to be mentioned in this in the permission file that they are working on. So the process works fine. Application team tells what the permission that they need, and then through this pipeline they get the permission required for them. And I've shown an example here. So in this I've shown three application DevOps team: application 1 DevOps team, application 2, and application 3 DevOps team. And for example, application 1 and application 2 DevOps team, what they need is they have to provision an EC2 instance, and that EC2 instance needs to connect S3 bucket and also needs to write to CloudWatch logs. And if this infrastructure has to be provisioned, the application team needs to be able to have a permission to provision EC2 instance, and they should also have a permission to create EC2 instance role, and then the permission policy, and then attach that EC2 instance role to the EC2 instance. And when application team has to write or request for the access, this permission file should have the required IAM statements to enable the application DevOps team to carry out that action. So which means this permission statement should have permissions like create EC2 instance, and then create IAM role and attach policies. So those permissions should be there in the statement, which gets reviewed through this pipeline and gets attached to the IAM role. So once this is done, the application DevOps team can provision this task, and the EC2 instance can perform the required action that it needs to be done. So things are going smooth, and one of the application DevOps team comes to know or knows that. So since they're able to create a role for an EC2 instance, the permission that they are attaching to the EC2 instance, since they are creating it, they can add the high privilege, or they can elevate their privilege and then attach it to the EC2 instance, and then they can do unintended actions which are not reviewed here, because in this statement we just asked the review from cyber and the central cloud team that we want to create an EC2 instance role and we want to create EC2 instance, and that's the permissions that are reviewed. But using the create role permission, the application DevOps team can create a role with an additional or elevated privileges, even though their intended usage is to just to provision EC2 instance and to hit the S3 bucket and CloudWatch logs. But the permission that is provided to application DevOps team enables them to create a role with additional privileges. So how do I solve that issue, or how do I solve that problem? So the cloud team has trusted the application DevOps team and provided the privileges that is required for them. But with the create role permission that is attached to DevOps team, they can create and role without any of the reviews that has gone through now, and allows them to make unintended actions. So how do a central cloud team can give permission to DevOps team to create a role, but still they are bounded with a specific, they are bounded to perform a specific actions. So that's where we have the permission boundary comes into picture. We'll go to the second picture here, which helps us to understand that. So we will follow the similar setup here. The application team still has to request for the permission that is required, but the central cloud team makes a restriction that when you ask for a create role, the condition is you should also have the permission boundary that needs to be used when you're creating a role. For example, if you see here, this permission statement has a create user or create role permission with the condition that the IAM permission boundary is attached. The permission boundary is nothing but what are the actions that in general the central cloud team sets as an boundary for the application DevOps team. So in this case here, the permission boundary set is the application team can do S3 actions, they can do CloudWatch actions, they can do EC2 actions. So so we would have the permissions requested to create role. Along with that, the permission boundary is created, which is then reviewed by cyber team and then the central cloud team, and then it is attached, and then it is the permission the policy is attached to the DevOps role. So now with this, the application team can perform the actions that is required. They can provision the EC2 instance role, but this EC2 instance role would be bounded by the permission boundary policy that is attached. So what this does is the EC2 instance gets the permissions which are defined in both the places. One in the permission statement that is mentioned for the EC2 instance role, and also which is available in the permission boundary. And to give you a view of how it looks like, so you can think of a Venn diagram where one side we have permission boundary policy statements, the other one is in EC2 identity based policy that the application team has created. This was approved and reviewed by central cloud team, and this was created by application DevOps team. And the effective policy that gets to the EC2 instances, the one that is matching or available in both EC2 identity based policy and the permission boundary policy. So for example, in the EC2, the application team tries to tries to write a permission which gives them access to delete a Lambda function, or which tries something to the DynamoDB table. But they will not be able to perform that action because the permission boundary they have set is the S3 actions, the CloudWatch and EC2, and with that they can only perform that particular action here, which is the boundary set by one central cloud team to the application DevOps team. So that actually gives control of what the DevOps team can do. So they are only within that control of what is defined in the permission boundary. So to summarize, so initially without permission boundary, what happened was the DevOps team has a